They'll be difficult to attain, but the UN's Millennium Development Goals are feasible, says José-Manuel Barroso. They're at the heart of debates in New York this week. So what is Europe's role in reaching them? The European Commission President says his priorities for the future are more money, a better partnership between donors and beneficiaries, and innovative financial tools like a tax on financial transactions.
The EU is the first donor in terms of development aid, yet many poor countries are saying that a lot of this aid is diluted in layers of bureaucracy, intermediaries, foreign contractors. So do you agree with that, and what changes do you think should be made?
We are very much in favor of joint accountability for aid, and in fact we are pushing for that goal. We want it to happen so that we can together, the donor countries, the donor community and the recipient countries, to make an assessment of the aid, how it is really implemented.
At this stage, very few EU countries have reached the 0.7% target, and most of them are far from it. So, realistically, how many will make it by 2015?
It's true that we have to, in this case, with the public opinion and with our member states, that if we have difficulties in Europe, and it's true we have, there are people in the world that are dying because they don't have enough to eat. They are dying because they don't have clean water. They are dying because it's some very cheap medicine. They could be saved. And so I think from an ethical point of view, the fight for the MDGs is really an imperative. But I think also, for those who don't feel the same urgency, that in terms of the self-interest of Europe, it is important to keep this kind of relations with the developing countries, because we are creating new markets. We are also working for the good of Europe.
You've mentioned ethics and accountability. Now campaigners are asking you for a tougher transparency directive, more binding measures toward European natural resources and mining companies. So do you agree with that? Are you going to do something? When?
We have been approached very recently about this, and in fact I've promised them to look at this very favorably in a communication we are preparing for the beginning of next year. Communication on overall transparency in our activities. It's true that we are already supporting, in fact we are financing the initiative on the extracting industries, transparency, so we are already working on this. But I personally believe that we could and should do more also with others around the world to increase the transparency in all the action of the countries when it comes to action in developing countries. It's only fair to recognize that the public has the right to know how the companies of the developed world are acting in developing countries. Sometimes people speak about corruption in Africa and in other parts of the world, but to have corruption, it takes always two. One is corrupted, but someone is corrupting them.
Regarding the crisis, what impact has it actually had on development aid? Is it a real excuse or is it a pretext?
It's in fact a temptation when we have this heavy pressure on national budgets. I'm very proud that in spite of this difficult economic situation, the member states have agreed to reiterate their commitments to go to 0.7% of GNI by 2015, that they have agreed on the fast-track financing to fight climate change in developing countries, that now they've just agreed that I could announce on behalf of the European Union this 1 billion euros that was not yet allocated. It was already in financial perspectives, but not yet decided how to spend it and with which countries, and now it was agreed. So, I mean, to be very open, there are some doubts, but at the same time it's also fair to recognize that globally there has been a commitment on the European Union side.
What are the latest news on the depression front?
We are better now than 1 year before. Having said this, we are not yet out of the uncertainty. There are still factors of nervousness in the markets. And that's why we should have no complacency. I believe we should keep the line of fiscal consolidation and reforms in Europe. Fiscal consolidation because if there is not confidence of the markets in the efforts the member states will do, that will of course increase very much the cost of capital, and the debt will go up. The debt is indeed a very serious problem because the money that now some member states are paying because in the interest of the debt is money that they cannot spend in social services and education and health.
What were really your impressions during those few days and what conclusions do you draw from it?
I think the conclusion is quite clear. We are not yet there. It will be extremely difficult to achieve them, but it is still possible if you put a lot of enthusiasm, if you understand the urgency and the dramatic situation of many parts of the world. So I think it was a useful event, and let's see now if the commitments are followed by action.